Hey, and welcome to State of the Hack. We're doing a special edition on our predictions for 2019. I'm Nick Carr from the Advanced Practices team.
And I'm Christopher Glyer, Chief Security Architect, and we're here with Steve Booth, our Chief Security Officer.
Welcome. What do we? Before we get into your background and what you do here, can you? This is the important stuff.
Yeah,
what did you bring?
Good stuff. So, like, you guys.
Yeah, so no beer this time.
I know you guys get good beers, and I saw the one where you guys had the Ethiopian coffee.
Yeah, with Debo. Yep.
Right. So I figured there's nothing wrong with a good single malt rye whiskey. This one's out of the Anchorstein Brewery, guys. So it's San Francisco based because I know you guys are all Virginia, but some of us are over on the Silicon Valley side. So.
Cool. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Give it a quick taste.
And it smells awesome. Cool.
Nice. Well, yeah, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little bit of your background and then some of what you do here. We obviously know we get to work with you a lot,
Right.
but.
So it's the easy answer is sort of internal corporate security. So I have to do all of the normal things that any large enterprise has to, protecting the employees and emails and phishing and laptops and all that other kind of crap. But then there's all the sort of the data-centric things we have to do because, we've got Intel buses and we've got what do we do with the DTI data and all that kind of things. So being able to do all of the corporate security in a modern kind of a world is kind of interesting. I did a CISO conference in San Francisco, and I was up on stage doing one of these thingies. And on one side of me was a CISO from a medical company, and they're like, everything's IT 1.0, everything's in a data center, nothing in the cloud. And on my other side was, he said, we have MacBooks and Wi-Fi, and every single other thing we do is in a cloud service. They didn't have any data centers at all. I'm like, well, I have what he has, and I have what he has.
I'm somewhere.
And we provide cloud services, and I've got private clouds, and it's like, welcome to it. Like, that's...
And you're multi-cloud.
Right. I know, yeah. Azure and Amazon and Oracle, like, yay.
All of them.
Hell, we need to get Google Cloud. Why not, right?
So it's funny, I think of, people being a CIO, CISO that kind of move between organizations, and yeah, it's totally different challenges everywhere. It's not necessarily transferable completely. So,
but what's funny is you get a lot of CISOs or CIOs. They'll go like, "Oh, well, my company's different. Every company is different. We're all different, right?" So the stuff that I have to protect as the CSO of a security company, our crown jewels will be different, but my threat posture is different. That doesn't mean I'm more or less than somebody else. Like, I don't have to worry about protecting SWIFT transfers or doing evil wire fraud, that kind of stuff. But yeah, when we put out a report on some Pakistani APT group, they might punch us back, and it's just welcome to it. Like, that's the threat profile we have. Whereas if I was an investment house, I'd have to go worrying about whether or not my traders are having communications outside of protected channels, right? So you have to tailor the job that we do to what it is that our business is evolved in.
So what did you do before this, or the short story of how you got into this?
How did you get into security? Because there's no one direct.
There's probably actually a lot of people that are like, one day I want to be a CISO, like I want to work up to that level, and I don't know. I'm sure everyone's is a little bit different, but.
Don't do this, Joe. I was running network operation centers. Then I got to I was for a payment company that got bought by VeriSign, and we had a fraud problem, and I was like, hey, I can solve that one, and we did, right? It was pretty cool. And then it was doing other interesting fraud stuff, then security stuff, then going, just everybody has their own path as to how we get there. I did a chunk of post-breach consulting when I worked for Microsoft, which was fun. I mean, it's terrible to say fun, I'm sorry. But when you're working a breach where they're exfiltrating the data through the thermostat on the wall, and you go like, all right, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Getting into some of the nuances off of there, like I did one where the bad guys were actually using the corporate SCCM instance to distribute their outbound, like I need to be able to have reverse access in here, and they signed it with the corporate PKI, and it was the only signed executables they had, and you go like, he's better than your IT team. Right?
That's the anomaly, is the correct thing.
I've definitely worked cases where the IT team was like, wow, they know our network better than we do. Like, the bad guy added a static route somewhere that allowed them, they're like, oh, that won't work. And then they looked at it and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, that actually totally bypassed our entire thing, and we didn't even know you could do that. And you're like,
I think that targeted attackers look more like good admins than your good admins do. They probably look like bad admins in comparison. So it's like, this admin's really good. I didn't know we had that guy.
I'd modify that just a little bit. They look like a good lab person because they can try a lot of stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So like there was one I did where they had, the company had a pretty tight firewall change control process. The problem was the one system you did the request just did an email into the queue that the networking guys picked up with. So the bad guys just figured that out and dropped the email in, right? Well, that was like the 4th or 5th time they had tried to figure out how can I abuse this fairly tight process, right? They only needed one to work, right? Whereas a good admin, they would not be able to break it 4 or 5 times, right? They can't do that one.
Right.
You don't really have to have a regression cycle and much testing when you're the bad guys, right? You worry about leaving tracks around to be detected, but like nobody really cares if a mail bounced.
Yeah.
I mean, like who cares, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, it's a different side of a thinking about it, because when you guys get in on the big ugly breaches, you're looking for here's the breadcrumb we caught them with. And my world is how can I prevent all of the breadcrumbs that may or may not end up needing to call you guys.
Right.
It's a different sort of a take on it all.
Sure. Yeah, we're honed in on a specific one, and you have to focus on all of the possible
That's a pain in
threats
the
and
ass.
risks.
And I'm sure specifically hard here because we do a lot of sharing back with you, like, hey, we just saw this really cool thing, and you're like, do I really have to secure against that? You know, it's you get the frontline access, I guess.
As a company, it's fun though. Like I had one of these, we were Black Hat a year ago, and one of the, ignoring names, one of the consultants comes up, red-faced, pissed off, because he had just found this thing, and he was basically escalating to Travis, the number 2 guy in the company. And he's like, I just found this thing in a breach 6 hours ago, and damn it, it's not an HX yet. I'm like, cool, I want that guy working my breach. Like,
Yeah.
6 hours ago, nobody knew this was possible, and you're pissed that it's not already through the detection queue. Like, yes.
Well, so we're here to talk about kind of predictions for 2019.
Yeah, and I think our report should be out now, if you want to take a look at that when this airs.
Sure. Maybe you want to start with, or...
Yeah, I think I've said for the last year, we've seen attackers looking, I've joked that attackers look more like red teams than red teamers look like attackers. I think we're going to see and we just kind of talked about attackers looking like sysadmins. I think, and we've started to see evidence of attackers looking more like other things too, a lot of deception. I think we see attackers looking like, hijacked legitimate software. It's just software you wouldn't expect to do it. Whether it's Trojanized binaries, throwback, we're seeing more and more of that. But just people leveraging compromised software to conduct attacks. Towards the end of this year, we had a report on Click2Gov. We put out that blog post, and there's APT17 stuff previously, just a lot of that activity. And then
Actually, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
So for 2019, whether we see in 2019 or not, we may not realize it until later, but I think we're going to start seeing some of the more advanced nation states, especially as there's a lot more sharing about information about what groups look like, start to, instead of just planning like a little tiny thing like false flag, actually like try and be like a wolf in sheep's clothing, or a wolf's clothing, if you will, like actually fully trying to emulate what, a Fin 7, right? And be like, hey, I'm Fin 7, or I'm APT.
Well, it's funny because if they're using the red team tool set, Cobalt Strike lets you do these malleable C2 profiles, and they give you a couple old APT group ones.
Sure.
But like, you can roll your own, just update it based on the latest report and look like another group.
But like the entire GTPs, like they're like the usage of backdoors, the staging directories, like trying to actually fully emulate what they look like. I think that's one of the things we might see in 2019.
Yeah, I think we speaking of emulation, the other thing we've seen is like people leveraging commodity access to come in,
like buying their way in, right?
Exactly, and that's one of these weird things where we frankly have to decide the kind of stuff we care about. I'm sure this is what you have to do all the time. Like this is people buying later stage access. That's just
something commodity that's just sort of clickware, and you're like, hey, I have access to a box in that company. You want to buy it for 10 grand, right?
Yeah.
The stuff that I worry about gets into all of the stuff that's a little less technical, but it's how humans do things all the time. Like we actually had one here. One of the execs sent me over a thing. It was a LinkedIn profile that was fake, that was created from someone that one of our execs had met at a conference they had just gone to. So somebody at the conference had a picture of our exec talking to this woman and took her picture at the conference. That was the profile picture, and created a fake profile and said, hey, here's that information you had requested. Luckily, our execs get a lot of training, so she sent it over to us, go, hey, I didn't request any information, this is bad, but that was not an email that got around all of the things. It was a LinkedIn message off of a phone, right? So we get in and have to go do hey, what's the intel, who's doing this kind of stuff, that kind of thing. But that's not like evil bit detectors in,
Sure. Right.
And it could have worked. If I just didn't have as security aware execs, that could have gotten people in. And you go like, all right, what happens when one of your C-star O's are now actively engaged with somebody they think is someone they just had a conversation with?
Yeah, the web services stuff that's really, I mean, I guess that's within your scope to protect.
Totally. So I'll give you the ugly side of that one. We've actually had multiple times that Kevin will end up doing presentations to boards of directors of how far do we have to go to protect our employees' personal lives in order to protect the company.
Sure.
And that immediately runs right up against privacy.
Yeah.
Right? You go like, well, we can put our HX plan on everybody's home boxes. And you go like, well, then I'd have everybody's home search history.
Right.
I don't want this. I really don't want this, right? And you're like, well, but it would protect it.
It's
and,
interesting that we run into that during investigations.
Right.
Actually, with a lot of people with unmanaged devices, they're like, we'll push this out to everyone in whatever system they're using, and it's not even like BYOD. They're really not supposed to use it,
Right.
but or they forwarded a phishing email to their wife. That was one we had APT34 people forwarding
They really wanted to open it
saying,
tonight.
hey, look at this great job offer I got, right? Because you flatter someone and try to get them to click on a job offer and send it to a spouse or something. Can you believe this? And they click it. So it is this weird world of like what's within your scope to
or even
protect.
targeting their personal email
Yes.
with the hope that they would open it up on their work asset, right?
I had a
I've seen that before, right? Where
I had a consult engagement a while ago. We were doing a phishing awareness thing, and we were tracking what was the click-through rate and what was the I opened it but I didn't click on it, and we actually tracked the forward rate also, and at that
Nice.
company it was 8%. It was like, hey, we had several tickets to the service desk saying, I'm trying to click on this thing, it's not working.
Good.
I just wanted to let you know that I wanted to sign up for that thing, right? You're like, oh God.
Yeah.
There's no patch for layer 8.
Nice.
Let's see. So another maybe prediction for 2019. I think we're going to continue to see much increased usage by different threat actors of legitimate services for command and control.
Yeah, we have Steve Miller on our team who's been focusing on that for a couple quarters now, like looking for it. And just recently, he keeps finding all kinds of interesting stuff. We set these traps to say, what is something you could communicate with? I think he set traps for, Tumblr, and recently found Tumblr being used for C2 for a targeted backdoor.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't think there's any legitimate services that we haven't seen because they blend in.
Right.
So I don't know if
Right, they're encrypted. They blend in. They get to like a net block of a major provider, whether it's Microsoft or Amazon or whomever, right? And is probably going to evade most corporate controls.
and a lot of times that layers in the SSL, which presents challenges as well.
That's going to get the stuff Google's talking about where they just want to deprecate standard HTTP, right? They want Chrome to just say if it's not HTTPS, then you shouldn't be using it at all.
Well, and so there's a couple things. There's been a big effort. I think it was Cloudflare. I don't remember, but they've been working like a cross-industry team where even within like a TLS connection, if you do server name identification or SNI, the SNI portion of it, and this is partly how you can do like domain fronting, is unencrypted. Well, they're actually, I think they just figured out a way, and they're rolling out a new way that you can basically have that field encrypted. So then everything will be encrypted.
Is that the TLS 1.3 stuff?
They're actually
Okay.
they're I believe they're different approaches. TLS 1.3, again, probably another possible.
We have all these wins that have come out in 2018, with like people restricting domain fronting. Now some challenges in the company maybe
Right.
in being able to, as providers, being able to separate that. And for us, like Salesforce and their JA3 project showing how you can like fingerprint SSL connections based on applications, based on the server, all this cool stuff. And then, understanding it's privacy versus security. And that's always the issue with SSL. And now we risk losing a lot of those fingerprints that we're using to find malicious activity, but it's fingerprinting. It has to do with privacy.
So you guys operate at a different level than I have to, because like I don't have many guys working my graveyard ticket queue. Like that's not how it goes, right? So I have some amazingly good people on my team. Like I'm incredibly proud of the team that I've got. But they're not going to get into SSL protocol nuances and like I couldn't possibly get through all of the events that we have to get through in a corporate, right? So a lot of that ends up being you guys go find the big, horrible, ugly targeted thing, and that ends up coming downstream several things. And you would get like when they start saying like, okay, nobody should have TLS 1.0. Okay, great. I should not be doing, right, or whatever, like whatever those. So I get into the category of what do I have to deal with, whether that's an alert or an architecture or a configuration, right? And I like that you guys do what you do.
Yeah.
Like I do. It's sort of one of those ones where you figure that there are the SEAL teams that are out there doing stuff, then there's an awful lot of the Rangers that do what we do, and then you figure like the corporate IT would just be like the grunts on the ground, right?
Yep.
And you go like, all right, we need to know more than everybody, but I don't need my guys to be able to go getting
Yeah.
into crazy.
And it's funny because I don't think that it's exposed to you, right? So like peeling back our process, we're putting out silent stuff and watching telemetry. When we start seeing attackers use it, then we're like, oh, this has validated this theory. Let's up this so that it's visible and blocking where possible.
And that's where some of that industry magic gets into it, right? Where you go, like I saw one thing off of the FOD things we got. There's like 10 billion evil URLs in there.
Right.
You cannot pass every packet by 10 billion URLs. You can't do it. So you have to go like, all right, that's a great place for a machine learning model as to which ones are relevant, which ones aren't, which ones are live. It's a cool way to start pulling some of that magic. At my level, I don't really want to have to worry about it.
So for the audience, FOD is a cloud-based engine that we have that's associated with your email products that basically allows us to detect malicious URLs.
Follows every link
phishing email,
or can.
It's like a headless Chrome browser can actually follow redirects and all those pieces and
analyzes through the sandbox whatever's on the other side.
And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
we analyze about 1 billion URLs a week, and
but at my level, I'll end up with tickets that came out from a FOD queue. Like,
sure.
That's where that's my engagement point. And good. Like I don't want to I do a lot of the CISO conferences. People want to go like, oh, blockchain this and AI that.
Yeah.
Almost no CISO is ever going to enable their own AI engine to go do their machine learning
can
model,
blockchain
right?
solve your email problem?
Just blockchain. Like that's the answer, right?
Why not?
So it's funny though. You mentioned ML stuff that's in products, and it wouldn't be a prediction episode without saying machine learning is going to be big next year. But I think we tried to show, we put out public blog posts about how we do like malicious process prediction, just how we do, obviously malware guard, that we are using binary classification stuff, how we analyze PowerShell with an ML model. So like we're really trying to show our work, that we're doing a lot of it. I think that in 2019, we hopefully, at least our teams, will see ways that it helps your team members, the way that it augments their work, exposed more places, these little like tactical assisting engines as opposed to just in the products.
Our marketing engine has sort of stayed away from all of the buzzword crap, which is, I like that, although at some point you do actually have to
tell someone that you did it.
Play a game and sell something.
So we're not
right?
a big data, cloud security,
and we're going to blockchain it, right?
company.
I'm still gonna launch Firecoin.
AI.
Right.
Yes.
And the crappy part is we do almost all of those things, but that's not, we don't go like,
blockchain.
right. But, and I got one of these things from you where it's like we don't actually say our PhDs are any smarter than anybody else, although we have Seth, sorry, we kind of win on some of these. But you do get into, you go like, all right, we have a decade of tagged data, so anybody's PhDs off of our data set is going to have a better model. Prediction-wise, though, since that's what we're talking about, I think everybody's going to have a machine learning model.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's going to go. Like somebody's going to go, hey, I've got this data set, and I've hooked up some Google Analytics. Look what I've got, and good.
My hope is that in 2019, it's a hope, not a prediction. Everyone's using it, and not that many people know it, because I think for it to be a successful tech, you shouldn't know. Like Google's predictive search, you start to type it in, it starts to suggest things. That's been, machine learning forever, and you don't hear them shouting about it.
Although, I mean, like, my phone keeps giving me these little Siri suggestions like, hey, do you want to go to Pete's? Literally, I got that one on Saturday. No, just because I went to Pete's last Saturday doesn't mean I want to go to this. I mean, like,
a little creepy.
I like coffee. Get out of my phone. Like,
all right, so another prediction, and we touched on this with our interview with Matt Graber from SpectreOps, is over the last 3 years, we've seen just a massive uptick in the use from all threat actors, sophisticated use of PowerShell. And I think what we're starting to see is the tip of the edge of the most advanced ones moving away from that, or using it more selectively, or getting rid of it altogether. And I think 2019, and that's credit to Microsoft for spending a lot of time and effort with building out a lot more visibility into the operating system, and in Windows 10 with like AMSI, and there's a bunch of different things to help from a scripting perspective, either visibility or security. I think now red teamers and more attackers in 2018 will see move away from using that, and the soup du jour is C#, right?
Yeah. If you want to help attackers keep moving away from PowerShell, check out like Matt Dunwoody's blog on greater visibility through PowerShell, highlighting a lot of things that Lee Holmes and the team have done. A sort of practical guide to at least get you to where we're saying a lot of people are, and we're seeing attackers move from it. I know our red team as well.
They're starting to, right? Like, it's not, I mean, we still see tons and tons of PowerShell attacks, don't get me wrong, but I think in 2019 that needle if you think about it as a pendulum, I think we've seen it shift towards it. Now we're starting to see at least the leading edge of it shifting away.
Those in corporate terms, though, you can't have your SOC be expected to go look at all PowerShell flying around ever. The cool part about the outputs of those, you go all right, there are categories that should not happen. We should not have any PowerShell before version 5. Okay, great. I need a capability to go make sure that that's true, and then you can drop the GPO and it says it's not allowed anywhere, right?
Right. Or an alert if you get a downgrade from 5 to 2.
Right, exactly, right. Or there was one of the Helix analytics that's in there. It looks for hex obfuscated PowerShell. That's awesome because I could have a brand new SOC guy that just started the job a month ago. He doesn't have to know what else is in the payload. He just knows they're trying to hide the payload. Right?
Yeah.
Legitimate engineers are not doing this one. Okay, hit the investigation button, right? And then you can sort of say that's a good way to be able to say I need normal mortal humans to be able to to know when to bring in the SEAL team. So
I think in the world of other languages, moving from PowerShell to some others, we'll see more cross-platform targeting. More APT29 was using Python since 2014, but we're seeing more of that. We're seeing more people use it because whether people are shifting to Linux servers in the cloud or what the change is, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe purely the visibility. More Python, I think more Go. There's a fairly scary, there's some different POCs out there, Go-based backdoors with HTTP2 comms and stuff. So I think it's just critical that people that are writing the content, looking for things and looking for behaviors are looking at this cross-platform stuff. Cross-platform fishes too, something that if it were to execute on Windows, it might be benign, but on Mac, it's going to do what you expect. So if something's analyzed in a sandbox, it presents challenges. So I think people are starting to get really clever, and we're seeing that. I expect we'll see more and more.
You get a lot of people that like the CISOs and the head of IT security, where they really just want easy buttons, though. I actually had a conversation with a guy at a CISO conference in London where he's like, yeah, I just want to block Python. I'm like, oh, wow. That's so not understanding what the
problem is.
And if you did, go hire a lot of engineers to go do manual
And there's this thing called PyInstaller and PyExe where I can actually take Python and make a binary out of it, right? So good luck blocking Python.
I'm going to stop services. I'm going to not, forget it.
Yeah, I have to imagine the tools that are at your disposal for things you could do. I mean, you hypothetically could do these things. And then actually practically what makes sense and what leads to user complaints and everything else, it's a whole other world to me. Yeah, or some of the stuff, the fascinating situations in my world are when you take somebody that's a little non-technical that asks a simple question that has a really complex answer, right? We had, some of the people on our legal team are amazing, and one of the people over there was asking, well, how come we don't have SMIME everywhere? You're like, okay, because we need a dozen more people in the service desk, and if our customers don't have it, and she was basically asking that I just want everything encrypted, right? Sure.
It seems simpler on her side,
right?
And you're like, well, there's a nuanced thing about mail server to mail server encryption, and she's like, I don't care, I just right.
Yeah.
And you really do want that. You want the lawyers to just go, I just want it encrypted. That's a win. The fact that they wanted that was a good win. It just doesn't happen to have a nice, cute little, oh, sure, I'll check the secure button.
There's not a good technical solution to make that easy.
Right.
So let's sell that. No kidding.
Right. That's the whole security architecture half. You guys are all in, the bloody war story when the fire department's needed, right? And then one of my other hats is, what are all the architectures that we have to build to try to not need you, right? Right.
Yep.
And where do you put the budget, and where do you put the effort?
We're trying to work ourselves out of jobs too. It's okay. It's not just you. So I don't think it'd be a prediction episode unless we said ICS stuff. But let's caveat that I think 2019 we'll see more ICS targeting.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely.
But that sounds pretty blasé. People say that each time, but people really should step back and see what happened in 2018. Year over year, there were some new norms pushed in that space and several others with just attacks escalating.
We had 3 major worms at least, so Bad Rabbit, NotPetya, and WannaCry by North Korea. Well, North Korea, WannaCry, Russia, Bad Rabbit, and NotPetya.
Yep.
And
exactly. Just it absolute
major worms that did major, billions of dollars
increase of destructive attacks. And I'd roll that in with several of our guys have been out talking about more and more of the things we had. We put out the APT38 report last month with a destructive attacker, and that's where 2018 that line was crossed into 2017 into 2018 with the Triton response that we responded to, where the intent there was physical impact.
Right.
And so we've seen this stuff, I think that,
It seems
so
like
again,
cyber norms
we're kind of there.
more towards like, it's at least more acceptable or at least able to happen.
Sure.
I think that ICS has been, people have been wary of it in the past because of the potential physical impacts, and if they're less concerned about physical impacts, then the ICS stuff will follow with it. So
There's some ugly things to get into. So you're talking about malicious intent to go harm life, right? I was talking to a guy yesterday, actually, who their next mine is almost totally automated. Like think drone trucks and drone diggers, and the truck that drills the hole and pulls the explosives in has no human in it, right? And so he's got this 800 square mile pit mine that has to have Wi-Fi everywhere. And his point was, if I just modify that truck a foot either direction, two $500 million trucks are going to collide, right?
Yep.
That could be an accident, right? Think of all the places where a piece of malware was meant someplace and it just got out in the whole world.
right.
Some of these ICS things, like you could shut down a multi-million-dollar a day mine
Yep.
on accident because you screwed up, and you go like, all right, that's actually pretty impactful.
Yeah, I think guys like the ICS community have talked about that for a while. If you really map it back, it's just introducing uncertainty into those environments, whether on purpose, whether it's a pen test and stuff like that. But in 2018, we saw people like on purpose, targeted attackers. And so 2019, based on really no real repudiation for that activity, I think we'll keep seeing that increase. It's kind of a scary time, actually.
And there's some good and bad news there. I'm talking to a lot of CISOs that they just picked up security of the OT network as well.
Yep.
The downside is that's kind of IT security 15 years ago. They're going like, oh, I got a firewall, I'm fine.
Right.
Right?
Well, and
Yep.
what's interesting is, at least when I've talked to companies, they're often like two completely separate teams with two completely different sets of processes and even mindsets, and understanding like what threats are and what problems are. And it's like
Well, and what the capabilities are. There is no patch Tuesday for your pump controller that's, they don't exist.
It's I want it to just be stable and like just don't touch it.
And many of them don't even have an update capability, right?
Yep.
There was one I was talking to a guy.
Right, it's like some piece of machinery that's 25, 30 years old and would cost you, hundreds of millions of dollars to replace.
I was doing one of these. They were talking about the control systems on a ship moving oil, right? And they had to do some updates on the thing, and they're pulling it out of the port, and the guy does a firmware update on the engine driving the ship and bricked it while it's in motion in a shipping channel. And you go like, all right, welcome to it. IT security all of a sudden makes up like, so you need change windows, so you need like all the board on a ship. Right?
Yep.
Like and the mechanic's like, whatever, dude, I hit the update button, it didn't work. Right?
Yep.
Because I do diesel mechanics.
Right.
Right?
So luckily we have teams that can try to help with that, but solving this globally is interesting. We're also trying on the product side, because I think when you get down to that environment, you really can, for the most part, outside of newer operations, you can only operate at a passive layer, like on the network layer.
Right.
So we have our ability to extract files that are transferred laterally, the east-west coverage with Smart Vision, that actually make for a great fit down in those environments where you can basically get host-based sandboxing and detection without touching anything.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see more of that.
There's some cool like repeated things, like when you're talking about evil PowerShell or evil Python, you go like, all right, I need evil control signaling, right?
Yep.
So if I can handle finding categories of things like that, hex obfuscated PowerShell, can I find categories of problems in there, right? Because you don't have to know every single pump and every single nuance. You need to know those as well, right? But you can actually make some broad things like, hey, this is not how you should be behaving.
Yep.
The challenge is from like a detection perspective. If you think of like a 9-inning ball game, if you're detecting an ICS attack at the control signal, like you're literally in like the last bat of the bottom of the ninth,
right.
like that's like it's too late, right? Like the bad thing either has happened or is about to, or like.
So the maybe good part here is, at least in the cases that we've discussed, outside of Stuxnet, which I didn't have hands-on experience responding to, but in the others I've had experience in, because I came from that world, a lot of things come from the IT side because of all those connections, because of all that automation, all the drones and automation down there. They have controllers and people with access. So a lot of those are IT connected. There's a lot of opportunity there for detection. There's a lot of hope, but people really need to, I think, get serious about it with some of the lines that were crossed in 2018. Looking at 2019.
There's some forced blind spots that you got to get rid of also, because I guarantee that casino didn't think about their fish tank as being an ICS network, but it was, right? So almost every building has got a smart building interface as to how the contractors are getting in to manage the elevators and the HVAC. Like all this stuff exists almost everywhere, right? So it's there's no stages of grief on the blue team, right?
Yep.
You just go like, all right,
Yep.
I have a smart building network, go, right? Like not, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't do this. Too bad, right? Nobody has a whole bunch of facilities people to sit around in case there's an elevator problem anymore.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I think as people see more how effective, especially as we've seen the last year, how effective supply chain attacks can be. Whether it was the CCleaner attack from, what's probably APT 17, to which impacted tons of organizations. And pretty much every organization had CCleaner installed on some system, right? To the supply chain attacks at MEDOC by the Russians, to the hardware one today where they release information potentially about a chip being implanted. As people see that it's really effective and how easy it is to bypass a lot of defenses, I think we're going to see a big, continued shift in trend using those. Could be,
I think people will have, people now in the end of 2018 have the examples, the real world examples behind what were speculative 2016 predictions. So I think our 2019 prediction is people are going to get serious about this as defenders, and when you get serious about it, you start to find it. I think people, when you look for this stuff, you never know what's going to turn up. So I think we'll hear more about it in 2019.
So getting out of your guys' trench for a second, getting serious with the discussion in security terms, like the grunt on the ground terms, you have to decide what you're going to stop doing in order to get serious about something else. Because unless you get really lucky and get incremental staff or new budget or whatever, you really do have to do this. Everybody says, oh, prioritize what you're doing. That really means choosing what you don't do, right? And that's brutal. So when you start end up having the conversation where you go, my security team's not going to be involved in your patching at all. We're not going to tell you what you should be patching at all. You patch every technology every month, no matter what, period. And I'm simply going to run the system to tell you whether you passed or failed. Because I need those headcount to go in and go do all the stuff that we're talking about here, right? And that's, welcome to it, that's the way it goes. The good and bad news is that also ties into the CIOs of the world. They had to get into that same thing where you go all right, do I get involved in the cloud ops? Do I have my network guy also has to learn the Gigamon? Do I all of the whatever, right? It's not just you constantly add everything until you just pop, right?
Right.
That prioritization discussion and the organizational wherewithal behind it, that's really difficult. Whereas when you guys end up on a breach, you're looking for what is the one thread that gives me all of the rest of the thing in there, and I'm looking at a sweater. Right, I mean, it's not which one thread. One thread does not matter. I got to cover the whole thing.
All of the threads, yeah.
Right, so.
You're looking at a vest.
So you can come into my world and tell you want to work tickets. I'll take you.
Nice, awesome. No, it's a great point as we speculate about where people should care. We have to keep in mind that what else do we not care about? What didn't we care about from last year that we stop caring about next year?
And we use the red teaming guys. That's effectively it's a high impact architectural review.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Did you do what you thought you were going to do, and was what you thought you were going to do sufficient? Right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. We love the red teaming guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did red teaming for 5 years at Pricewaterhouse prior to coming here, and I think it's a super effective way of figuring out, what controls are actually effective, and because there's all sorts of things that you may not know about, or confluence of this low thing and that medium thing and this other thing over here that, oh, look what I can do, and then improve, test, and do that kind of iterative approach. You can actually start meaningfully move your security posture.
But on my how do you motivate hundreds of people in organizations? I'll get into things where you're talking to the CIO. You're whatever the outcomes are, that's the 90-day punch list for fix. It's not I'm going to test it and sooner or later we'll figure out what's in your priorities, right? So if I find little nothing, great, you got some resources back. And if I find 30 things, you're having a bad quarter, right? The problem with the red teams is they'll end up pissing people off sometimes. There was one of them it wasn't us, but it was a different company that was involved, and they were doing an Oracle thing. And the Oracle team was they were trying to say well, you didn't use any Oracle vulnerabilities, so it's not my problem. I'm no, we got it through Active Directory because your role-based action control was crappy, and no, that is your thing. You don't get to say it's not my problem because it happens to be an Active Directory, because they're saying
your managed stuff
your
versus
NDAs,
We run into that when we're investigating a lot of things. There's a lot of people's managed infrastructure used for things, and it's kind of like, well, it doesn't affect our core product that we're delivering to you, but it does matter. So
and that's like okay, if you're going to rely on the authentication as one of your core controls as to how you're doing this, yeah, your Oracle people that have to do your data security, they have hardcore input into how that gets done. Nobody gets to wash their hands of this one, and red teams are really good for being able to force those conversations. Right? I don't care if the AD guy owns it or the Oracle guy owns it. Somebody has to own this. Right? That was they pulled me in to go talk to the CIO at that company to help him through the stages.
So that's a great way, honestly, to wrap it up. The red I love that way, because the red teams, a lot of the things we discussed are things that red teams are doing. Several of the really great red teams, ours and several others out there that we get the opportunity to run into, they're testing and trying in a lot of these areas, and frankly, we offer things in the ICS space too. I think every category we touched on, you got to have a red team that's going to get up, that's going to try it, and going to see, are you ready for this? We think we're going to see it this next year. So, hey, cheers! Thanks so much for bringing the drinks too.
Great talking.
No problem. It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it is real good.